Yo, welcome to Journey to Truth podcast. Tonight we have on Reiki Practitioner, energy worker, and intuitive empath, Stephanie Farlow. How's it going, Stephanie?
Hey guys, how are you? Hi
Hey.
everyone.
We're doing good. Thanks for coming on. We've been looking forward to this one.
I have been too.
I personally have been seeing a Reiki healer for quite a few years now, and I'm very familiar with it. And I'd love to know what got you started in it, and what put you on your path to even discover what Reiki was.
Well, again, and this is going to come up a lot of times in this podcast, I'm sure. I had it was kind of like a voice almost. Like I kept hearing, like a voice kind of tell me to get into Reiki. Like every time someone would speak about it, it was like my inner voice, my higher self, which I didn't know what it was at the time. It's what saved my life from narcissistic abuse, because I was on the verge of suicide. So I just was like, I wanted to know about it. And then it was just every time I would mention the word Reiki or getting into it, it was like, I would hear this voice like, do it now,
Really?
And so, yeah, it was crazy. And so I wanted to get in with like the best school. And I went to the Reiki school in Philadelphia, but I was living in South Jersey at the time. And I went I did Reiki 1 and 2 in Collinswood, New Jersey, which is just over the bridge in Philly. And I had an amazing teacher. And the group of girls that I was with, they were all just like wonderful. And by the time I had gotten out of Reiki 2, I was just floating on a cloud. I was just in the state of bliss that we all want to be in at all times for like the whole month of December, like right after the class had ended. And I remember my Reiki teacher saying like, I don't want to be like a downer, but it's probably not going to last, but it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, be gentle with yourself. Like, and I was like, oh no, this shit's lasting. I was like,
It'll last forever.
Like floating. So, I lost like a ton of weight, at the time. And I was just like, I had lost like from a past relationship, my house. And I was like, kind of renting with my kids. And then I moved to a townhouse with them, and everything was going really well. And that's when narc number 2 came in. Because when you're at your best and your light is shining the most is actually when they kind of come in. They
pick up on that.
Well, we were friends for like 20 years before.
Oh, really?
Any of the stuff went down. Yeah. So, but I had never been on that level myself. I had done so much healing on myself, so much work on myself besides being in Reiki. So we had a mutual friend that passed away, and it was like, he was just kind of swooped down, I guess. And, that's how I look at it now. At the time, it was just like, oh, this is awesome. So anyway, I'll start kind of back at the beginning. So when I was little, I was such a weird kid, but when I was little, I had these beings that would come and visit me, and I don't really remember much about it. It was like, I know that they came, and I know that there was lots of communication. And I know that my dad knew that something was going on, meaning he knew that I was talking to something and seeing something that maybe they couldn't see. But my mother would say it's my imaginary friends.
Hey, I had one of those.
Yeah. And you can see them, right?
Yeah. Have you ever, I don't mean to interrupt your story.
No, go ahead.
Have you ever tried to like revisit that moment, like through any type of hypnosis or anything, to revisit those experiences and maybe try and see what you couldn't see then?
Well, Siobhan and I are going to do that on the next alchemy session.
Oh, very cool.
Nice.
We never
Love
got
Siobhan.
to do it the first time around because so much happened in my first alchemy session that I never even got to ask like any questions because 5 hours went by like that. It was just like,
Really?
yeah. And yeah. When she said like our time is up, I was like, what? Like
Yeah.
it
What are you
felt like
talking
a minute went by, you know?
That's
Um,
crazy because 5 hours is a long time, especially
it is.
sitting in one place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I did? I actually said, I think I'm going to be better off if I like lie down. So I did. And I had like the trundle bed pulled out and I was lying and I had this camera on, which is on my computer. And it was really strange because I, of course, had to get up at some point to go to the bathroom and move around the room and stuff.
Sure.
And Siobhan was going like looking and she's like, what? She's like, you got up, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, look at the screen. The screen stayed with me lying down the entire time, but I was moving around the room. Like it was, but I mean, it could have been a camera thing.
It could have
Like,
been
Yeah.
a freeze. Yeah.
yeah,
Picture
yeah. But we
froze.
were both like cracking up because
Funny though. Yeah.
it was just me, like, you know, and so much was happening. But anyway, that was a crazy experience. And I never got to ask, like I said, the questions. But one of the things that I was concerned about, not concerned, but we had a shore house when I was little in Atlantic City. And my crazy Italian family would jam into this little 3-bedroom house every weekend. And it was like loud and crazy. And I was the first grandchild. So it was like my grandmom's house with all of her siblings and their kids. But I was the first grandchild. And I had cousins who were my mom's first cousins that were like my age. And I would like sneak out and go into this alleyway that led out to like the Cumberland Farms. We were in a court. And I don't know why, but for some reason, when I would stand in this alleyway, I would know that I had to go there. And if I went there, then they would show up. But I don't remember, like, I think it was like, I'm guessing that they were telling me things to like guide me into this life, because I do remember having a lot of, oh no, I can't believe I'm here moments. Like, am I really here in this? Like,
Oh,
yeah, I had a lot of those. And I
Really?
was like, and they're my parents. I was like, oh, you know, my dad was like pretty awesome, but I didn't like my mom very much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's definitely, she falls into that cluster B, malignant, borderline.
Oh,
Yeah, she,
really?
yeah, and I think that's why we repeat these patterns, because we go after people who, you know, we kind of repeat the same patterns. Like our parents were, you know, messed up, and then they're the people that will seek out, you know,
Yeah.
in our relationships. So I definitely learned that one. So, I mean, that kind of faded out after a while. Like they just stopped coming. And when I was around 12 years old, I went to a Catholic school, and I remember I would be up all night talking on the phone. So I was always so tired. I had a phone in my room, like, and that was like the cool thing back then.
Oh yeah.
So
Especially the clear ones that would light up.
yeah, I had my own phone number, you know. So I'd be up all night talking on the phone to my girlfriends and stuff. And we had like, you know, the party lines going and stuff. So I would be exhausted when I came home. So I passed out on the bed. And I was trying to like stay awake. And all of a sudden I was like out of my body, like flying around my house.
Been there before.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was just flying around it was my grandmom's house because my parents were divorced at that point. It was my maternal grandmom's house. So I floated and I ended up in my kitchen on the ceiling and I was floating over my grandmom and my mom's head. And I remember hearing their entire conversation and looking at the top of their heads. And I'm going, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And then I floated a little further around the kitchen and I can see the pot of, in South Philly, we call it gravy, but it's sauce with meatballs, like bubbling in the pot. And I remember going, oh, I guess we're having like meatballs for dinner. And then I just like zoom and I was out of the kitchen and then I was somewhere else. And I was in this place, this beautiful, beautiful place with these colors that like flowers and colors that don't even exist here.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
The only way I can describe it. And it was just gorgeous. And there was a swing. And I was like, and then I asked, where am I? And I got the answer, you're in the park. And I was like, okay. And then the next thing I asked was, well, what is this place?
What park? Yeah.
And someone said I heard a voice say it's a transitional place where people go after they die, like in between. So I was like, oh crap, I'm not supposed to be here. And I got so freaked out.
You think you were
And then,
dead?
and I was back in my body.
Connection breaks when you freak out. Yes.
I freaked out and then I was back in my body. But then when I went back in my body, I couldn't move. I was having like sleep paralysis
Yep.
thing.
Oh, really?
That's a symptom. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a symptom of your body's waking up before you're totally back.
Right.
It's a symptom of.
Yeah. And I was opening up my mouth and nothing was coming out. Like I was trying to scream.
Oh man.
But
I lived that life for years actually.
Did you suffer from sleep paralysis?
Very much so. I missed lots of work because of it. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
it was pretty dark for a while, but it's not about me right now.
Yeah. My oldest son went through the same thing. He was trying to look for at first like the scientific explanation, but I think he's just kind of past that now.
I did figure out how to beat it though on my own. So
Did you?
yeah.
Good. I think he must have too, because I think he never mentioned. He said he doesn't have it anymore. But
Did you ever see a being in the room when you had it, Tyler?
Definitely shadow people. I was woken up with like a shadow figure right next to my bed.
It's a very commonly, yeah.
I know stuff was in the room because my dogs would be looking at it, following it through the room, growling at it.
Really?
And I could just feel the presence. There's an energy. The whole energy in the room changes. But these entities, I would see them in my dream first, and I started realizing how to lucid dream. And they infiltrate your dreams, and they appear to you in your dream like a part of it. But there's something about them that stands out, and they would get closer to me. And when they would get closer to me is when I would wake up in that paralysis. And whatever attack was taking place, I didn't know. But I figured out how to spot them out ahead of time, and then I would wake up. I'd be like, not this time.
Nice.
And I could wake up every time before it would happen. So, but anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
So anyway, so just like briefly, apparently, from what I found in my research of all of this with the narcissism empath dynamic thing, is that usually most women and men will have two relationships before they've had enough. You usually don't learn the first time. And there's different levels of it. So there's like, there's lower level narcissists who will mostly get their narcissistic supply. Let me explain what that is. It's energy. So it's energy, negative or positive, but mostly they like the negative. And it's your energy, it's your attention. So if you're giving them any kind of attention, whether it's negative or positive, that's fuel. I like to call it fuel because it just sounds better to me, but narcissistic supply. So the lower level ones kind of will be the ones that will use their children against each other. Like they'll have the favorite child, and then they'll have the child who's the shit child, and they'll play them against each other. And they'll stir up the pot and have drama between their own babies just to get attention. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It's very real. Yeah.
Right. So my oldest son, his dad passed away before he was born. He was actually murdered. But I was like 18 years old and pregnant, and I had, I had him and everything. And this was like later in life. I was in my upper 30s. I met my two teens now. So it was their dad. And he was definitely on that lower sort of level. They're like kind of, those ones will take you like financially. They always like want to suck that kind of stuff out of you. They'll suck the life out of you too, but it's mostly what they can get from you, sort of, and they don't necessarily get their fuel from romantic relationships. So then there's like the middle range narcissist, which it can kind of go either way. They could, I'd also want to say the lower level ones have more like knee-jerk reactions, whereas starting from the middle and up, they have more control, which means that they'll manipulate you a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because they have control of the whole situation, and they'll deliberately do things to manipulate you to get fuel from you. Whereas the lower ones have no idea that that's what they're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? They know that they crave that. Well, they don't know that they crave drama. They just create it, but it's more on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
Those middle and upper ones, they know exactly what they're doing, and they sort of,
They use people.
yes,
Yeah.
I'll start from how it starts out. So it'll be like let's just say it's the upper, this guy, H.G. Tudor, who is a psychopathic narcissist who actually counsels women on what to look for. I actually did a session with him, and they basically will, they'll figure out what you like, what you want to hear. They'll also look like, it's almost like they're able to see what your damage is, if that makes any sense. So we all have damage, right? We all have issues. They can see it. They're like psychic psychopaths. They just are able to see. And so whatever it is that you have an issue with, they'll be the opposite of that. Like they'll buy you the perfect gift, and they'll say the perfect line, and they'll
So that's how they kind of like,
yeah, it's like the
in.
seduction. They'll reel you in.
Yeah.
If they know that you value, although they like to do everything, they know that you value like becoming their friend first. They'll do it. Like they'll do whatever they can do to suck you in.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that they do is they'll call you at the same time every day. So for me, it was always at 7 a.m. Like every day I would get the text, whatever it was, something funny, cute, whatever. It was always the same time. And like, I'm not the type, like I'm not materialistic, but like he knew that I was very spiritual, and I was reading a lot of spiritual books at the time. And so like he buys me this awesome spiritual book, and then like writes this beautiful message in it, like just to give you an idea of what, I would prefer someone cook for me rather than go out to dinner. So like, then he would make me food. So, whereas if he was seducing a girl that was all about money, he would then take that
Take her
girl.
out
He
to
would buy
dinner.
her lavish gifts and take her out to dinner. You know,
Yeah.
it's whatever. They're chameleons. They can
Mm.
be whatever you want them to be. So
Interesting.
after that love bombing, seduction sort of phase, they'll tell you like the things that you maybe don't like about yourself. They'll tell you the opposite of that and tell you how great you are in this area. So but then all of a sudden, when it switches to the devaluation phase, they'll start out with like telling you the complete opposite, like how horrible you are, and you know, just
Really?
these awful. Yes. So
Wow.
you're so confused because you think like you found the best person in the world. Now, for me, I had a little bit of a unique relationship. I want to try to keep it general of how it normally is. It was a little bit different for me. I knew that he went through women like every couple years or like even less. So I was kind of really keeping my distance, and I didn't want it to go to any other level than let's just kind of keep it open kind of a thing. And like, I wasn't really ready to be out there with anyone at the time anyway. I was just worried. My kids were younger then. So I think at first it was like a little bit of a blow because he seemed to be pushing in that direction. But then I think after, he probably was thinking, oh, this is good because then I can do whatever I want, and you know, let's just keep it open kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, and he was definitely like the womanizer sort of type that, and in the beginning it was very respectful. There was no other woman around. There was no talk of other women. There was none of that stuff. And then it just flips to the total opposite.
Really?
Yeah, because then they want that negative fuel. They need it. They don't, they first it was like, they actually think that you're going to save them because they think so little of themselves. Their ego is so fragile and it's ready to crack at any second. So they get you to the point where you fall so hard for them that you're worshiping them. And that's the positive stuff. But then that's not enough for them. And there's so much more power for them if they can get you to go negative and cry. And so then
Yeah.
they start the devaluation phase.
Yeah. I watched your live with Lauren Pritchard, and I remember you saying that they like to like swing the emotions really,
Yes.
so like they'll get
They'll
you,
go hot and cold.
yeah, on like a dime, right? So like
Oh yeah.
they really like that apparently.
Yeah.
So
Like,
you mean like they'll just like flip a switch as far as like
oh
temper?
yeah. It's crazy. Like you could be
Yeah.
out having the best time of your life, you know, just talking, laughing. And then I remember one time we were out at a concert, went to see Paula Cole at this outdoor like amphitheater. Like it was just awesome. And we were having a good time and we were like drinking and laughing. And then I think like I spilled, I was laughing and I spilled a drink on him. And he literally turned into Satan. Like it was like, he looked at me
Really?
like he wanted to like kill me because I dropped a drink on him.
Mm.
Wow.
And it was like, I forget what he said, but he literally almost made me cry because I was just like, you know, but that's kind of how it goes. Like
That's kind of how it works.
it's very, yeah. And
So
then
it's like they'll use
gaslighting.
any excuse they can use to
That's what
like
I think.
bring that out. It's not is what it
Right.
sounds like. Yeah.
Like you at first will think it's, oh God, like I guess he really got upset because I spilled a drink on his shirt or something, but really that's not what's happening.
No, he's just kind of acting to get
Right.
you to be in that negative state to feed off that
Yes.
negative energy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at what point, like, so during all this, were you aware of all these levels of narcissists and stuff?
Yeah.
Or this
Not
all,
when that was all going on.
did this come with like your awakening or your?
Yes.
And
So it
that's,
was like the triangulation,
yeah.
which is triangulating me with other women, or even just like other girls that were friends, like because we were friends really. I mean, we weren't in a traditional relationship, and we were always friends. So he would triangulate me with girls that he was just friends with, and then he would triangulate me with women that he was sleeping with. So it was just one big giant clusterfuck of
Wow.
triangulation. And then, you know, the gaslighting. Oh, you should hear what people say about you when you're not around. You really
Really?
should check yourself in somewhere. You know, that kind of stuff. That's the gaslighting.
Yeah.
So, it comes from the movie Gaslight, which I believe it was a British version first in like 1942, and then there was an American version in like 45. It's about a guy who he manipulates his wife into thinking that she's crazy by like turning like the lights off or something, or the gas light on and off, and she thinks that she's nuts, and he talks her into like going in to a mental institution. So basically, like, he's trying to take her money.
Yeah.
So that's where that term comes from. Is that movie
It
actually?
comes from the movie.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I never knew where the term came from. I
Yeah, it's
knew what it
called
meant,
Gaslight.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically just lying to somebody over and over and over until they start believing
Yeah.
the lies.
And then it's always bringing other people into it too, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, this person said, you know, this, or they won't even say that. They're just like, I just rather not say, but like you definitely need help. Like you're falling apart, and you'll be like, oh my God, am I?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and then you start believing it, or like
Yeah. Oh, you definitely start believing it. He had me so convinced that we had this beautiful, he used to call it our node thing, because, you know, he had to do the spiritual role when he was with me, because he knew that I was a spiritual. So he would always, oh, it's our node thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, he would just be like, you ruined us, you ruined our relationship. And I'm thinking, but what did I do? Like, I would just be so confused all the time. Like, what is like happening? And, you know, and I really loved him. It was just, I like worshiped the ground he walked on. I mean, I did. And, it was just really, it got bad. So
well, they probably wait till you get to that point where they know you're obsessed with them, or you're, you know.
Yeah. Well, once they know that they have you hooked.
Yeah, then they're like, all right, now I can.
Now the devaluation starts, so they can get the negative stuff, because that's the good stuff. That's the juicy stuff for them.
Because if they do that too early, then the person will probably leave. They'll be like, screw you, you know. But if you,
and it's really sad too, because like, from what I understand, when I read this guy H.G. Tudor's work, his writing, because he's a wonderful writer. It's sad, and he said that like when they wake up in the morning, they actually wake up with like anxiety, because
really,
as soon as they open their eyes, they need fuel from the second day. So they'll grab their cell phone and see if they can get some fuel by texting someone, or, you know, or if you're with them, then they can just get the fuel from you. Like if you're, you know, but it's sad, because he said it's almost like there's this monster that's behind you at all times, waiting to like pull you down into like a pit, a dark pit.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have like that finger on your back at all times. And I thought, like, how sad and scary. But sadly, they're not really able to be helped and go through therapy like a normal person would be able to try to turn their life around. I mean, it sounds like
the only way they can change is maybe like hitting rock bottom, and that there's no, like, everyone in their life has to shut them out.
They don't do that. They actually will go into therapy when they hit rock bottom. And that's
really?
One of their primary source of supply. So let's just say, in the story that I told you guys, at that time, in the very beginning especially, I was his primary source of supply. So if I had cut out and said, like, listen, I'm out, I don't want you in my life anymore, when I was still his primary source, he would have probably ended up in therapy. They will literally have like a meltdown. So
really?
Yeah, because they need their primary source. If they don't have enough secondary sources to fill the hole that the primary source did for them, they'll have to go to secondary sources, and they don't like doing that if they don't have, there's not like copious amounts of secondary source supply that they could get their fuel for. It's crazy, but that's
Well, so
how.
is there a way they could, like after having a spiritual understanding of things, I realize we have entity attachments and stuff like that. So is this possibly an entity attachment? It's somebody that's working through this person, and if they did receive the proper spiritual healing and remove the entity, could you see a change in that person, or is this not the case?
It's not the case. I think there's a woman, she's Australian, her name's Melanie Tonya Evans. I did her healing therapy, which was sort of like a hypnosis. It was like going, it's called theta healing. And you do it's like hypnosis, and you do your childhood wounds. You go to each one of your childhood wounds.
Yeah.
She said that they would have to because she worked with them as well as working with the victims. And she said that they would have to be like locked in a solitary room with no fuel for like 25 years to even begin to get
Really?
better. Yeah.
What do you think? So do you think this is like
Good question.
soul that, yeah, I'm trying to
No, I know what he's trying to say though. I think I know what he wants to
like
say.
this is not a normal,
I think it's
like
a
what causes
reptilian
this?
soul, like meaning
Reptilian soul?
I don't think I'm not sure that it's like a reptilian possession thing
You think
where
it's
it's
like an
like
incarnated, like a reptilian that
I think
incarnated
he
into a human
incarnated
body?
as a human,
That's something I was thinking, but I
but
wasn't
he
like,
was a reptilian
yeah,
soul.
that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think completely different than we. It's like, and this is really good because this will make you really understand it about the they're
The negative
like,
ones.
a lot of people will say the same thing over and over again, especially like the narcissistic healers on the internet and all. They're aliens. They're literally freaking aliens. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing human about them. Like it's really bizarre, but it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
When you understand the greater reality and then you understand that,
Yes.
you're like, oh yeah, that
No
makes a
empathy.
lot
They
of
have cold empathy because that's how they're able to figure out what's going on in your head so they can attack you. So it's
yeah.
like they have empathy from it, just kind of like, well, let me just put myself here. So how's she feeling? All right, so then I can do this to her and I can get this kind of reaction.
Yeah, well, knowing about the Draco reptilians, or the negative reptilians that are kind of have been manipulating, the planet for so long and using humans. They've been using us for loosh energy, for that negative energy like you were talking about. So if there's an incarnated one of those, an incarnated reptilian, that's exactly how they're going to act, because
Yes.
that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting that energy from you and from whoever they can, because it's like they're disconnected from source, so they can't get it naturally like we do.
Nope.
So they have to like suck it out of people.
Yes.
They have
exactly.
to be a parasite.
It's like one big giant cabal in a person. It's like,
yeah.
This podcast is going to be called "Your Narcissist Spouse is a Reptilian." Run now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right now.
During my session with Siobhan, I think I had said that to her, that like, he's a reptilian or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I watched a video with Simon Parks, and he said that
I love Simon Parks.
yeah, he was explaining it about reptilian souls.
I do remember him talking about
that Lilith was a reptilian soul.
Oh really?
Yeah, he said that like the Adam came and then they made Lilith, and Lilith was a human, but she had a reptilian soul. Like they put a reptilian soul into her, or however she incarnated as a reptilian soul. And that's why it just didn't work out. And then they had to bring in Eve. And then there's some people that think Eve and Lilith are one and the same. I don't. I actually resonated with what he was saying. That it's that constant service to self mentality going on. Like it's literally like he would walk around going like, it's me against the world and I'm in constant defense mode. And like, I will demolish anyone. And here's the scary part. He was super intelligent, like intellectually, and he was self-educated, and the people that he worked with, they would try to, like, his superiors would try to reprimand him, and he would just do whatever he wanted, and he would just demolish them in like 2 seconds.
Really?
Just with words. Like,
Yeah. I know people like that. They rely on that to get by. Like they can come up with the most, they can sound like a genius and with a comeback or something like that. And even though you could be 100% right, they could just talk you down out of it. And they're happy after that.
Yeah. Like I remember saying, well, why would you do something like that to me? Like I would never even think of doing something like that to you. And he would go, oh, I see. You're trying to say that you're morally superior to me. That's what you're really saying. And then the conversation. So one of the articles that HG wrote was called Word Salad and How to Toss It. Yeah. That's what they do.
They flip it back on you.
Constantly word salad at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me wave this.
I would have been like, yeah, apparently I am morally superior to you if you're going to act like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the logic.
I mean, the thing is, at that time, I was completely walking on eggshells.
Oh, yeah.
So I was so scared to say anything. It was just the second I would open my mouth.
And he probably knew that.
Terrified to say anything wrong or that would piss him off before I knew it was happening. And I would have to, he would had a job where he can put headphones in and talk to me all day. So he would call me from like 7:30 in the morning and I would still be on the phone with them like at 5 o'clock at night. And the only time, yeah.
How is that even healthy?
Wow.
Exactly.
That's
and
amazing.
Everything is fast. Like they want you to do everything fast. That's a number one sign to look out for. If they want to pull you in a relationship too fast without taking it like getting to know each other kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's a big sign that they're
red flag.
Yeah. For sure. If they like want to be with you all the time, they start to isolate you from your family and friends. That's a sign as well. So how did I get out of this?
Reiki?
Well, I was doing Reiki on him. Little did I know.
You were absorbing what?
Yeah. Well, I was probably giving him my energy and absorbing like negativity.
Hey, that's very possible. Yes.
Yeah. And also like, I know that energetically when you're mixing your DNA and you have sex with people like that, you're really gonna like you're just gonna go to nothing. I mean, you're gonna be a mess because you will literally suck the life out of you for real, and you will, because it's an energy exchange.
I was just gonna say that
energy, but dark energy, and but I just want to touch on this because this will really blow your minds. They don't like sex.
Really?
It's the most bizarre thing. Yes. They, in fact, it like repulses them because they look at that as like a human thing, like a connection, and they don't want anything to do with that. So, however, they will use sex to get fuel. So, while there's like you're basically a masturbation tool for them. So it's like that's the only plus side besides the fact that they're getting fuel from you. So they're usually really good at it because they want you to be addicted to it, and then they'll suck the life out of you, but really they don't even like it. And then what they'll do is, because they don't have to do it once they get you in the devaluation stage and you're like madly crazy, they'll withhold it from you and dangle it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you will like just fall to pieces, you know, especially for a woman, because, you know, a woman wants to be desired and you're wondering what in the heck's going on. And you just, it's so soul crushing. I can't even like begin to describe it, but they love that one. Like that's one of their favorite plays. If they're on the higher level, narc, like up in the highest as you can go. I mean, he was up there for sure. They love doing that because they know that it's crushing you and you're confused and you're not going to ask, because most women won't like to talk about that. They'll just think, well, maybe this is going on or maybe that's going on, or, you know, and that's what they will do. They will just dangle. And then if you try to leave them or pull away, well, then they'll use it to pull you back.
Yeah.
So they always use sex as a weapon, the higher level ones.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really that. I think that was probably the most damaging for me. That crushed my soul into like a million little pieces. So it was bad. And then I was starting to deteriorate so badly that and the more I was deteriorating, the more he was abusing me. And then they'll throw you like a few crumbs because they don't want you to go completely gone if they still need you as their primary source. But once you're in that stage where you do start to fall apart, which it took me a really long time to get to that. And I when I counseled with this HD tutor guy, I told him my story. And I told him like, well, he was with this one woman and she was his primary source. And then he started to court me as his primary source. And once he had me hooked, he got rid of her. And I told him this whole thing and he just took a deep breath and he went, you have the most deepest understanding of what happened to you and of narcissism than any other woman I've ever counseled.
Really?
What the hell are you still doing in this relationship?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, what the? And then he's like, you should be dead. Like, he was like, and then he told me what he thought of me. Like, in other words, he told me what the guy thought of me, how he saw me. And I think that was my last and final, you know, I was done. I mean, I did all the theta healing and that did get me to a certain level. And I got to the point where I couldn't even be around him for long periods of time. But I still kept kind of going back here and there. Like I still kept, and then we would last for like a weekend and then fight and then I'd be gone again. Like it was, so that was my final. And then he told me, go around your house and find every single thing that he ever bought you and every single thing that he ever gave you and put it in a pile and burn it or give it away or throw it in the trash, because he said it all has energy. This guy actually understood energy, and he said it's going to keep you attached to him if you don't do what I tell you to do. And I did. I went and got everything, and some of the stuff is really hard to give away or throw away because you might like it, or you know. And I did. I even everything. It went.
Nice.
Yeah. So
what's interesting is you said he understood energy. What I've realized is a lot of people understand way more than they realize because we've never been given the vocabulary or the understanding of it. So we have different words and different terminology, but we understand things. People understand how things work on a spiritual level. They just don't know that they understand it.
Right. Well, this guy, he was a psychopathic narcissist himself, the counselor. And I bring him up just because a lot of people kind of like, oh, I don't know if you should have done that.
That's interesting that he was.
He was, yeah. Because I said, no, I want to know.
So
everything.
was he still acting? Like, did he do all that stuff too while he was a counselor, or was he like healed from it?
No, he definitely, like, he was still doing, he actually had a current person that he was doing that to. Like
Wow. But he was a counselor?
he was the same exact way. He would recycle women, but he never lied about who he was and what he was.
Yeah, that's just so interesting.
He did, the only thing he did was hide his identity for the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So we don't know, obviously the name H.G. Tudor isn't a real person, but he
But he like wanted to help people at the same time as he was like,
it was really strange. His therapist had he was in therapy. His therapist had suggested that he do that as part of his therapy. And the only reason he was in therapy, admittingly so, was because his mother was going to disinherit him if he didn't go to therapy.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, he said that to me. And then he said that I'm something called, because he loved labels, this guy. He said, you're a super empath. And I'm like, what the hell is a super empath? And he said, you guys take longer to break down. He said, you'll just scoff at our manipulations. He said, until there's like time where you can't take it anymore. But he said, you last longer. We like you the best because you last the longest. He said, however, there's a flip side to that. He said, you're also the same girls or guys who will figure out what the hell we are and figure out what happened to you before anyone else will.
Yeah.
So he's like and then he said, sometimes you'll figure it out and then you'll use that against us. And I absolutely did that.
Oh yeah.
Once I knew what he was for real and I was still in the relationship, I was totally, which is not good. It's not good. You're perpetuating abuse. You should never stay with them. And you should never go up against them because your heart isn't like theirs.
End that relationship.
Yeah, like their heart's black and you're trying to go against them. For what reason? Like, move the hell on. Get the hell out.
Get out of there. Yeah.
Get out of there. Like, run. Don't walk. Run. So, exactly. Oh yeah. So how did I find out? So this is really interesting. So I was at my last, like on my last leg sort of thing. I was going on suicide. And the only thing I think that kept me alive was my kids. But then I was still visiting suicide websites because I just felt like I didn't have a soul anymore. I didn't have energy. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't even working. I couldn't get off the couch. I mean, I was just, that's pretty much the state that you will eventually end up in. And so I heard the voice, which you guys know John DeSouza.
Yeah. Love John DeSouza.
Yeah.
So he has a book. It's called Clear Hearers.
I want to get that. I just read it. I read his book, Extra Dimensionals, and it was really good.
Oh, okay.
I want to get Clear Hearers. Yeah.
Well, I got his book at a workshop, and I finally figured out what the voice was. So it's your higher self kind of guiding you so you don't kill yourself or you don't do anything stupid. So I heard the voice say personality disorder, and I'm like, personality disorder? And it said yes, cluster B from your college years. And I was a psych major in school, but
oh really?
Everything that I'm a college dropout, but everything that I learned in college about narcissism, I never really got on a deep penetrating level until I was in it, which is why a lot of these women and men on the internet who counsel and offer sessions for people, they're not licensed therapists, psychologists, but they know narcissism on a deep
experience.
level. There's nothing like hands-on, right?
Yeah. I remember the only thing I remember being taught about narcissism just from the little psychology classes that I've been in is like very surface level, nothing like what you're saying. Just like basically, or what narcissism means is like, oh, it's just somebody who's very full of themselves. Yeah. And it's very self-important. That's the way I took it. They're very full of themselves. They're very self-important.
Yeah, I've never.
So it's almost like it equates it with arrogance more than what you're saying.
Yeah, and if you would meet this person, you would think that's what he was, like an arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
But you would like him at the same time because he was funny and he threw like great parties and he was a musician and he was like creative, and like he actually could have been the most amazing person. And it's the same thing with this other guy, this HD tutor that I counseled with. He's had people say that to him, oh, he's like a brilliant guy, but for whatever reason, they still choose to lie and manipulate, and when they don't have to, but it's just how they're made. It's like they all play from the same rule book. They all, do you know what I mean? And they can't it can't be anything else. They're just how they're made.
It's like, yeah, and that's what it makes sense to me if they're like incarnated reptilians, because that's how they all are. So they all act the same way because
they're not able to be like us.
Yeah,
they're not able to love like us. And
it's like they just have to act that way to survive.
Exist, yeah. If the listeners are like going through, so if the listeners are doing what I'm doing right now, I'm going through every person I've encountered in the past.
That was like that?
Well, yeah, and just certain things you're saying are making me think of different people, and it's just I've never understood it on a level the way you're explaining it, and I've always known about it, but I never connected the dots, I guess.
Right.
So I think actually what you're doing right now is going to help a lot of people even realize if they're in the middle of this, if they're stuck in it, or they're going to do what I'm doing, like, oh my God, that makes so much sense why this person did that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just sad because he didn't even have to be much of a chameleon for me, because he already was the things that I kind of looked for we grew up in this very dysfunctional Italian South Philly sort of like neighborhood and families, and he grew up very much like I did. So, but he was different than everyone else. He was always reading. He was always, so I was really attracted to that from the beginning. And then the whole music thing, really what I found out is we're just attracted to what we know. My dad was a musician. I was listening.
Oh, yeah.
I was being put by my mother, who didn't want to take care of me, in a room with like a bunch of guys playing music on a floor when I was like 1 year old. So
really,
I grew up watching music. I literally, it's like in part of my soul. And so of course I would be attracted to someone that's, and I would do the same thing. It was like but that's the problem. When you show up as a 5-year-old little girl with that 5-year-old little boy who's completely damaged beyond repair, you're not damaged beyond repair, but you're still showing up as a 5-year-old, because, I would sit in the room and watch him play music for hours, and that would have been fine if we were in a reciprocal sort of relationship where, but he was just taking my energy the whole time. It was not, there was no reciprocal, and there was nothing going on other than take. And so it was crazy. So and then when I found out what he was, I still couldn't get out, because my body was addicted to the cortisol that it was producing from the highs and lows of the relationship.
Yeah.
So I was physically addicted to him. Yeah. So
wow.
It was a mess.
You really do understand this on all levels, don't you?
Yeah. Like the cortisol, I mean, if someone would have tested me, it was probably like off the charts. And
really?
And so then you develop, it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's CPTSD.
CPTSD,
yeah.
Yeah. And then I was going to do, have you ever heard of EMDR therapy?
Mm-mm.
No.
It's for people like soldiers that are in combat and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
This guy wrote a book, Peter something, but they do it with something with like where they make you move your eyes back and forth. But anyway, I never made it that far, because once I did the theta healing, it helped me tremendously. And then I started doing EFT tapping, and I did it while I was still in the relationship. So that was good because I didn't go into a complete shock. Like my body didn't go into shock from the lack of like the high and low.
Yeah.
And so I was doing all the rapid healing whenever I wasn't with him. And the EFT tapping really, I thought, helped me a lot. And I was doing Reiki on myself, and I was meditating, and then I started with the supplements because I was in adrenal failure because of the cortisol, too much cortisol. So I was like frozen, like my thyroid was just so screwed up, and I was just like lethargic all the time, like I was like a zombie. So I had to take all kinds of supplements and eat all kinds of foods that fix that. And then eventually I got better, and then I wouldn't be able to be around him for like too long. Or I would try to do things where I would give him fuel so he would leave me alone, knowing what was going on, but then trying to like stay in my own world where I didn't let him suck the life out of me. But that only lasts for so long because then they're going to come at you. Like by nature, I'm not a jealous person in any kind of a relationship. I never was.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have that in us to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
he would do his best to try to pull that out of me.
Really?
Because I didn't, I never really got jealous. I was just sort of,
So, so what advice do you have to somebody who might be stuck in this relationship? Like, yeah, I know you're explaining like stuff that you did, but is there any
yes,
advice you can give somebody?
see how I get on this rant and I forget. So
Oh,
anyway,
nice.
so after all that happened, I basically had like a spiritual awakening because the pain was so intense that even though I was doing all the healing like modalities and stuff, my advice is you also have to look at yourself and figure out what your damage is that made you get into a relationship with someone like that. So you have to figure it out. You have to find out. Usually it's abandonment.
Yeah.
Usually that's the one
It's
that's
almost like you have to like, yeah, figure that out and then heal that part
right.
of
But
you.
your core wounds are the same as theirs. So supposedly they said like a psychopath and a narcissistic psychopath are two completely different things because narcissists need people because they need to feed from them. Psychopaths really don't technically need to feed like that. And they're born where they say narcissists are made, but I don't believe that. I believe it's both with narcissists. I believe they're born that way, but
Mm-hmm.
they incarnate into families that will make them more damaged
Oh, yeah.
because they want to stay that way. I don't know. It's really confusing, but I have a feeling because his brothers and sisters weren't like that. Like he
Really?
did have some family things, but they were like not like that at all. Like they're not psychopaths. They're not
Yeah.
from what I can see. So
So the common theme that I'm seeing from everybody we talk to, people we have on, stuff, my own research, is it all goes back to the inner work that we have to do on ourselves.
yes.
It has nothing to do with the exterior.
Forget about them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's funny because every scenario, every different situation, every problem really cores from yourself. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and it's not bullshit because I'm starting to see this come from everybody, and it's worked for me on so many levels. So
Yep. Absolutely. And someone said to me, I was a little spiritual church I used to go to. This wonderful woman that was the like little pastor there. Her name was Reverend Margaret. She said she said something about you do the work till you die, and I was a little bit surprised back then about that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because I looked at her as like this great spiritual, wonderful, fully evolved being. And she's like, oh no, she said, you do the work until you take your last breath. So there's always something to work on.
You're never going to hit a point where you're like, all right, I'm done.
Nope.
I've made it.
Just like we're never done waking up, essentially waking up.
Yeah. So I think that's you have to, first of all, you have to go no contact. Like, I don't even recommend doing what I did. I think that it depends on the individual. Most people probably couldn't even do that because they would go back into negativity because they'd want to kill them. But I just, okay, I know what you are, and now I'm just going to stay focused on me. It's really the best thing to do is just go total no contact, and I mean no contact, no
like
email.
Cut them out completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Block them. In fact, he moved me in this apartment, and right after that was the end, and for the real end. And my doorbell is broken, and I left it broken. It's still broken.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I know one day he's gonna ring that bell when he's drunk and be outside at my door, because that's another thing. They never go away completely. They always come back.
Really?
It's called hoovering. How about that? They suck you into their dark world. So it's called the Hoover. Yeah, narc speak.
Are you saying Uber?
Hoover, like the vacuum cleaner.
Oh, okay.
And that is when they're out of your life completely. They'll like leave you a note. They'll show up at your job because
they'll try to suck you back in.
Yeah, because they think that you're their property until the day you die.
So your Hoover vacuum is a narcissist.
Yes. So basically, they're going to come at you. The relationship for them never dies until you die or they die. There's no end. So
for them, but you don't have to.
You can.
Oh, I tore that soul contract up.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I'm done.
You're gonna keep trying, but you don't have to respond. You don't have to. Yeah.
And in fact, I think I saw him out in public, and I was talking to my cousin, and we were in a bar, and he went to high school with him, and he hugged him. And when he was hugging my cousin, he reached over and put his hands on my back, because I turned my back on him. He reached over and put his hands on my back and like held them there. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to walk away, because if I react, that's what he wants me to do.
Yeah.
And then I left right after that, because it's like, it's not worth it. It's not worth being in the room, because they will do whatever they have to do to get your attention.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then he proceeded to tell my cousin, no, she's not your cousin. He's like, how do you know her? And he's like, she's my cousin. No, she's not. What? What
is that trying to gaslight him? Yeah.
It's like, yeah, she is.
I'm pretty sure she is.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the one more thing I wanted to talk about, which I did in the live with Lauren, was one of the times that it was bad. It was worse because when I was with him, I could always like drink with the best of them. I never had a problem with it. I never drank alone. I was never an alcoholic. But when I was with him, we'd be drinking at like 11 o'clock in the morning. He brought out like the absolute worst in me, and I'd be like drunk all day with him, or, drinking with him all day. And so it was like a snowstorm out. It was really bad snowstorm. And we were drinking, and we were playing Scrabble or something. And he basically, without getting into the whole story, he wanted me to leave. And he went up into the bathroom to shave, and I followed him upstairs to ask him, like, are you really gonna like throw me? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's like 3 feet of snow on the ground. Like, it was like the one snowstorm that we had in Philly that was like, it was like blinding snowstorm. And
like, you're really gonna throw me out in this? Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was like, you know what? At that point I did know what he was, and I knew I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. So I was trying to stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do. And I called my friend and I said, is there like any possible way that you think you can get it? I don't think I had the Uber app on my phone at that point. This is a while ago. She's like, yeah, I'll see if I can get you an Uber. So she's like, just stay calm and don't let them see you get upset. And let me see if I can get somebody out there. And I went into the bathroom and I said, so let me get this straight. So you actually want me to leave, like in this. And he was shaving and he turned around and looked at me and his eyes went completely black.
So that's when you saw the eyes. Okay.
Completely black. Like,
Wow.
and the crazy thing about it was, now looking back, like in hindsight, when that happened, I became paralyzed with fear, like where my legs were buckling. And
Well, yeah.
it was the scariest I ever was in my life. But I actually don't think it was from the eyes. I think that's whatever it was that came out in him, like the real him, caused this fear in me.
Really?
And like so paralyzing. That's when I think I called my girlfriend. I think that's what happened. I couldn't move because I was just going to like rough it and go home in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how the heck I was doing that, but
Sure.
I'm pretty tough. Like I'm a pretty tough girl. I started to like where I grabbed onto the railing to try to get down the steps, but my legs just wouldn't work. And that's when I called my friend and I was like, you have to like help me. I can't walk. And
So
yeah, it was frightening.
after his eyes turned black, what did he do? Did he just go
So
back?
then he was like, he started to follow me around the house, and I can see like and telepathically I understood that he wanted me to be sad, but for some reason he was getting the emotion of fear and he didn't know why.
Oh, because he didn't know
He didn't know
his
why
eyes turned black and then you saw
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Right.
So he
And
was like, why are you suddenly
yeah,
so afraid?
like, why are you scared when you should be sad? And I saw him like trying to figure out, because he was like a mentalist, for lack of a better, like they all are kind of to a
Oh,
degree.
yeah.
They can look at people and know what's going on, which makes them so skilled at what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he knew that something was going on and he couldn't figure out why he was getting. And then I just lost it. And the Uber driver came so fast, which was great because
Yeah.
I wanted out of there so bad.
That's great.
When I got to the door, I ran down the front steps, but I like jumped. And then there was a pile of snow that was like as tall, like almost as tall. And I literally jumped over this giant pile. Like I turned into Superwoman. I like jumped over this pile of snow and and I was in front of the door to the car. And I jumped in and I sat in and I said to the Uber driver, I'm like, I'm going to cry now. And he's like, that's okay. Go
Yeah.
right ahead. And I'm
Oh,
like,
go for it. Yeah.
and I just cried the whole way home, and then I was okay. But I was so scared. Like I was so
Wow.
scared.
So what point in the relationship was that? Like what happened after that?
I was definitely nearing the end.
Okay.
But I can't say that I learned my lesson. I definitely was back in his company after that. And
Really?
I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with me after seeing that I could be around something like that. Because it was like the equivalent of finding like your husband is a serial killer and you're now going to die and you have to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Kind of fear, like that kind of fear.
Well, it's probably the addiction.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was the physical addiction.
Yeah.
You know?
Makes you do things that.
Well, I did stay away. Like I didn't call him, go near him. I wouldn't take his calls. And then after about a week, I think I finally relented. And he called and said, like, are you going to come to the comedy show with me or something like that?
What did he say? So he knew you were avoiding him probably, right? At that
I think so. I'm actually
What?
surprised he didn't try to get a hold of me sooner. He kind of let some days go by.
Did he ever figure out what happened, or did you tell him, or like did
I
he ever?
never, no, I never said anything. And
Really?
I, again, I couldn't find anyone to tell me what happened. Like I couldn't, not people that I knew at that time, nobody knew what the hell I was even talking about. And then I read all of these stories now, you know, with the internet and YouTube, and I just hear so many of them of people's eyes turning black. In fact, I listened to one where this guy had said that it was his wife's niece. She was about 3 or 4 years old, and he said she was like a little psychopath. Like he said, she would like hurt the animals, like the dog and the kitten and stuff, and she would hurt the other kids, like in the family. And at one point, her grandmother had picked her up, and she wrapped her arms around the grandmother, and she looked at him, and he said her eyes just literally flipped this way. He said they went totally black, scared the living life out of him. He said he was scared shitless. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So I'm like, okay. So
That's like demonic stuff. To me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's like,
know. And this
that's even
little
beyond
like
the reptilian thing.
4-year-old, yeah. But he said he's like he knew that kid like wasn't right, and she would do like really nasty things.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, so I've heard a lot of other stories like that. Crazy.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I've heard like demonic possession stories. I think I have heard that where the eyes would go black. I think I actually with demonic possession. Something.
Right.
So to me, yeah, I think I don't know if that's connected to the reptilian thing, but maybe if he was a reptilian soul, maybe that allowed, you know, just the nature of that allows another like demonic entity or negative entity to possess or to be attached to him. And
Right.
maybe that comes through sometimes and something like that happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Tyler?
Yeah,
Well,
that's my theory.
I know there's I've watched stuff on the black-eyed children.
I have heard the black-eyed children stories.
Yeah,
too,
but that was always more related to an ET aspect.
Yeah.
Even Ancient Aliens did an episode on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this is something entirely different from that. Or
well, I think it is only because I think their eyes are just black all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the similar aspect is they do seem to fill people with dread and fear, which is kind of what happened to me when his eyes turned black. I did feel like unnatural fear. Like I felt like I shouldn't have been that scared, but I always thought it was because of the eyes, but now I don't think so anymore.
Well, it's probably an energy that he projected.
It was an energy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, we are on autopilot. We're gonna freak out when somebody's eyes turn black because we don't see that. You know, that's not normal in our reality.
Also, we're gonna have a visceral reaction to that.
Yes.
To the eyes anyway, but it could be like you said, you felt like it was more than that. So yeah.
But I see all these people, like I think even David Wilcock said that he found patterns when he was young of getting into relationships with these crazy toxic women.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that.
And he was just like, what the hell? Like, and then he did what you're supposed to do. You kind of look at yourself and you go, all right, what do I need to change in me that I'm attracting these people into my life?
Yeah. And
so that's what he kind of did. He did work on himself and, stuff like that. But he also talks about having that sort of that toxic passivity, where you're just so nice and you just forgive everything all the time and you don't defend yourself, and can't be like that either. You have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And I know people that are like that. They're in toxic relationships and they're so nice that they accept the abuse because they don't want to hurt the other person. It's fucked up, really.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're basically giving all your power away to that other person.
There were just certain things I think with with my relationship where I just wouldn't accept, like, he knew that I considered myself to be like of higher than normal intelligence, like, you know,
Yeah.
and he was right. See, they do know you're a little crazy, and I should have never thought of myself in that way, because what the hell, it's not, you know. And what is being an intellectual anyway? You have to have emotional intelligence, you have to be well-rounded, you have to, you know, there's so
Yeah.
many other aspects to intelligence that have nothing to do with intellectual, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And but he
Absolutely.
would always say you're stupid.
Really.
He would love to say you're stupid, and I would never agree with him. I would go, nope, nope, no, I'm not. No matter what, he would try his best to make me say those words, and I would not.
Well,
Yeah.
good.
Good.
Yeah. So, but so yeah, I think that it was my best worst relationship, because I had my full spiritual awakening when I had this relationship and I healed from it. I really saw the world for how it is, not how I didn't live in that cognitive dissonance state anymore. And once I woke up to myself and saw what I was capable of as a human being, and um, you know, had to heal the darker aspects of myself, I saw the whole world, like, what, like, this is what's really happening, and I can't stay in my bubble. And so, and I see so many people like that will not look at themselves. They will, nope, they just won't. And they're the same people that are those rigid skeptics. They don't want to hear anything. You can
Yeah.
give them like as much research as you want, and they're just like, nope, nope, can't
Oh
stay in
man.
my bubble. And that was me. Like, I was one of those people. My son, my oldest, was definitely into, he's for sure like an indigo, and he went down the Christianity path though, and kind of stayed.
That
And
was me.
I told him he's going to be stuck there if he didn't get out, but
Yeah.
he doesn't really listen.
You're gonna be stuck there until you start questioning
Yeah.
your own beliefs, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you open up to the possibility of there being more to reality, and you being wrong, and things that you were taught might be wrong, which had to happen. It just hit me one day. I was like, how do I even know I believe it's true?
Well, I sent him to Catholic school, and he like did not resonate with that at all. And he'd be telling these people, like, you know, they would be trying to teach him some religion. He'd be right back at them. And I was so like proud of him, because he always seemed to be like older than me. And my friend Joe, who I met at John DeSosa's workshop, he dowses for me and stuff. And he said
Oh
that like he's like a 10th dimensional being, and he told me all this stuff about and I'm like, that really makes a lot of sense, because I always felt like I was a younger soul than him. And he did say that I was like an angelic, and I was from Arcturus and Andromeda and Sirius B. They're the places that I incarnated. But he said,
really?
but you're still an angelic, and you were some kind of keeper of information. I was like, that's interesting, because when I did the alchemy session with Siobhan, it kind of said the same thing. It said that like at one incarnation, people would come to me for like, not like advice, like I would, but it wasn't like a knowledge, like a thing where it was like hidden or anything like that, but people would come and ask me like for advice, I guess. Or it
Really?
was, yeah. And what the being was saying to me is that now I'm so like, I judge everyone and everything, and I'm such a perfectionist with myself, and I beat myself up. And I was like, wow. And then when I listened, I was like, everything that he said is true. You're so harsh and judgmental. You really need to like lay back a little bit. And he said something like, if you only knew like where you've come from and like who you were, then you would be okay now. You know, you
Yeah.
wouldn't struggle so much with everything that's happening. you know, in the world now. If you would just remember who you are.
Well,
And,
that's advice for the entire planet. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
we can't go anywhere until we know where we truly came from, you know.
Yeah. But
What's
he
it-
was like
Oh my God.
describing, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that so anyway, getting back to my son, yeah, he went down the Christian path, and that's okay because I let him be who he is, and it's all perfect and it's okay, and I'm not gonna, you know, but he was talking about the stuff with the cabal in like like literally in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I had him when I was 18 and I'm old, but
Okay.
so he's, you know, he's in his 30s, and he was really knowledgeable about it. He loved Bill Cooper.
Oh yeah, Bill Cooper's awesome.
He really just
Yeah.
loved Bill Cooper and would listen to his lectures all the time. And he just said to me one day about the pedophilia and the satanic stuff, and I remember I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like I just
What?
was not taking it in. I don't think I was ever really fully asleep, and so I accepted probably like 80% of what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to that, it was like I just couldn't. And now it's like you can't get me to shut up about that stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Because now I'm just like, this is bullshit. Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. You were at that time. You're like, no, that's too crazy. That's too
yeah,
dark. There's
yeah,
no
because
way.
I couldn't look at myself. Why would I be able to see something so dark? You know, I couldn't see darkness in myself
Mm-hmm.
and things that I had to heal. Not that I'm a dark person, but we all are capable of, you know, and we all do fucked up shit. Let's face it. And we all need to look at ourselves unflinchingly and heal that shit, or we're never going to move on and we're never going to evolve. And that's really all we're here to do. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking. Tell us.
Preach.
We're just playing the game, you know.
Yeah.
We're just, that's it. We're playing the evolve game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, and what you didn't even it's funny how we shy away from that information about what's happening with the pedophilia and all that satanic ritual abuse and human trafficking. And then when you finally dive into it, you're like, oh my God, that's like the entire existence. Like this is happening on a massive scale everywhere. It's so funny. It's like we reject it like it doesn't exist, but then when you go into it, it's like the only thing that exists.
Yeah. Yep. That and people going missing in national parks, which I asked Ben and Rob to do an episode on that, and they gave me a shout out and did an episode.
Nice.
But the number's just astronomical.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
And it's the same with the kids that go missing.
Kids.
Like the average person doesn't know how many kids go missing in a year. They have no idea.
It doesn't really get reported. It doesn't get any media coverage.
No, it doesn't.
Actually, you might enjoy it. I don't know if my City Museum video I just posted, I don't know if you were able to check it out yet.
It's really good.
I saw it in work today, and I was like, oh, as soon as like it gets quiet in here, I'm gonna like sit and watch it. But then it got crazy.
Well,
so I never had a
it just explores that avenue of children going missing.
Really? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they do the same thing with the national parks, that they don't report the number. And I don't even know if I can honestly sit here and say that that aspect of the missing is cabal related. I'm not sure that it all is. I don't
think it all is, but I think a big chunk of it.
Yeah, the national parks. It's really it's like they just like go. I don't know if they're using like technology just to test on us, because people just like they're there 1 second and then the person that's with them will turn their back and they're literally turn around and they're gone.
Well, here's what I think happens. So we know from Corey Good and a couple other people, even Emery Smith, he talked about this when he was on Cosmic Disclosure about these national parks are labeled national parks because they're over some type of energy vortex. some type of
Right.
a portal. So these people might actually be entering a portal and just,
Yes.
literally
I
Just end
think
up
that's
somewhere
it. I
else
think
end
you're
into
up
right.
somewhere
your,
else.
No, I thought
yeah.
of that as well.
In the national
They
parks.
can
Anyway.
hear sometimes they can hear their loved ones calling to them, but they don't see them. They can just hear their voice.
Hmm.
And then sometimes when people are found, they'll be like, but I was calling you. Didn't you hear me? And they were right there the whole time. They're just like, almost like they're in a different, like, I don't know if it's dimension.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
it's
say.
like
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Stranger Things, if you've ever watched that show,
Yeah.
where
Like,
Will gets
did you
taken into like an alternate dimension, but he can still
see my shirt?
hear. Yeah, no way.
Oh, there you go. There you
I
go.
didn't even know you were wearing the shirt.
Well,
Yeah,
that's how
I love it. I love
I
that
did
show.
not even know you were wearing the shirt.
Poor Will.
Oh
Will,
yeah,
like he had a good year this year. I don't know if you guys watched the third,
I did. It was
but finally he got a
yeah.
better.
He he finally had a
Yeah.
good season.
Like I
Yeah.
think there were even memes out that said like Will Byers has a good day today or something like that. It was
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you were just like, oh, this poor
Nice.
kid. But yeah, it's
You know,
crazy.
what's interesting about the dimension thing is like that's like how a Sasquatch lives its entire life. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're
isn't
Yeah.
that
in
crazy?
another dimension the whole time, but they're still here. They're like
But they're able to like pop into ours and then pop back
Yeah.
out.
So is it like I thought that maybe it was David Paulides or maybe George Norrie, I forget, but they said that like they go from the fourth to the third, like back and forth constantly.
Yeah.
That's why they sort of like elude us
Yeah,
because
that's why no one's ever caught one, or
right.
like you'll see it, but then you'll go to try to like chase after, and then it's
I was
nowhere.
listening to James Gilliland's story about the Bigfoot that he saw. It was a female, and he saw it, and then she just kind of faded out. Like they saw each other,
Yeah.
and they had eye contact, but then
Mm.
she just kind of faded off.
James says that if you try to go finding a Bigfoot, you'll never ever find it. But if they want to find you, or they want to interact with you, then they'll interact with you, or let themselves be seen. But you'll never find one by like trying, because they'll pick up on that, and they don't want, if they don't want to be seen, they won't be seen, basically.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they sent you coming from miles away.
Yeah.
And they know your intention.
And they know your intentions and stuff. So.
And sometimes they make themselves seen because they don't want you around. They
scare you off. Yeah.
Oh, seriously.
Right.
Oh,
throw
yeah.
a rock throw a boulder at you or two.
Yeah.
I had a
Tyler had a rock thrown at him.
Yeah, I heard that like they will pick up like the biggest rock and like throw if they want you to like go away. They won't like come and attack you, but they'll throw stuff like and break trees and
scare you off. Yeah.
This was a little pebble toss. It happened to me at East City.
Really?
I was having like experiences every day with Sasquatch. I'd never seen one, but it was just very apparent.
You heard it in your tent.
At first I heard it. I woke up at 5 a.m. to a roar. It was like a deep vocalization. It wasn't, every hair on my body stood up, my hair on my head stood up, and it stayed like that. And it was like I was like like a current was running through me. And it was such a deep, it wasn't an animal snoot. It was it was like from a vocal box,
Wow.
And so going to bed that night, my girlfriend and I, we were laying in the tent. I don't know, it was like 1 a.m. maybe. And right outside the tent, we heard whack, whack. I mean, like tree knocks, like on a tree. And we both jumped up. It scared the crap out of us.
Oh my God.
We heard footsteps. We heard 3 like heavy footsteps, and then like and then it was just silence after that.
Wow.
And they phased out probably right there.
Yeah, and the next morning I went out to the medicine wheel next to the Sasquatch stone and did a meditation asking for confirmation. Is this Sasquatch I'm hearing?
Right.
So after that, I walked to the car, plug my cell phone in or something. Like we had to park way away from the tents, and there's a gravel road with like a wood line. And I was walking back from the car, and while I was walking back, a pebble hit me in the thigh from the tree line.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And there's no one over there.
And there's
No
nobody
one,
there.
no one was around.
Died.
And
Yeah.
I just knew.
That's so funny.
And then I set some stuff up outside the tent, like some crystals, and I made them like a little gift and all the stuff in a specific way. And when I came back hours later to check, it was like it was rearranged.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think I saw like pictures of that they were showing like how they rearrange stuff, and
They like apples
peanut
too.
butter and banana
Peanut butter. They like apples.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was one. This wasn't at East City, but this was maybe a couple weeks ago or so. I saw somebody on Facebook, I guess where they live, they like set an apple out, and then they came back and there was a bite out of the apple. And,
oh yeah.
and
wait,
like,
was it Tracy?
it might have been.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That was.
And I've also heard where like you'll leave an apple out and then the apple will be gone.
Yeah, but like I think she like asked for a sign or something and like left the apple.
She asked for a sign, so they just took like one bite out of it.
And they took a bite, and left it. Yeah.
Oh, so Alicia made a video, or her most recent video. She used like a 20-minute something video, but at the 7-minute and 30-second mark, I'm 100% convinced there's a Sasquatch call.
Really?
It's undeniably.
That's the last one that I wonder if that's the one that I listened to.
It could be. So she's walking around the woods.
And the kids are like around her.
Her son is, yeah.
Her son, yeah.
So what happened was that she didn't even hear that vocalization, because right after that there was a dog bark, and her son got scared. So she cut the video, and the video cuts right there. But listening back, like, because she was wondering what scared him, because she thought it was just a dog.
Mm-hmm.
But listening back to it, it wasn't just a dog. There was something else, and then the dog barking in response to that.
In response to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I listened to it 100 times. I was, turning it up, trying to evaluate it, and I'm convinced. And then she's been having all kinds of her own experiences out there. So I think something's going on.
I miss living close to nature. Like I kind of like living back in Philly again and reconnected with a lot of people, because I was in Jersey for 18 years, but where I was living before, there was at least some like grass and trees and I think the one property I was on was about 3 acres and stuff like that. But I really miss it because, I can walk to some parks and stuff that are here, but
sure,
yeah,
it's tough.
I definitely want to live out in nature more.
I mean, eventually, I think when the kids get older and they're not in school and I don't have to worry about that, I will probably move where to just be like back in nature.
Yes.
It's
crucial. It's crucial for us to spend time in nature.
It is. Like we crave it so bad. Like it's like who we are. By the way, I think like what I realized with all of us, like, and how we are all like interconnected with each other, without like going into everyone's name. I think we're all like in the same soul group. I think that's the conclusion that I came to. That like we all
that makes sense.
We knew each other incarnated, and we're in, from some other dimensions, and just like, Sue McClure, and just like I just feel like there's just this I get a very powerful feeling that and I'm starting to I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys. I got like a vision when I was just like, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't meditating, I wasn't like even calm or quiet. I think I was like in work I was on a boat after the flood, like the Great Flood, and I was on my way to Egypt, and I had survived the flood.
Really?
And I saw the water, and it was like this beautiful blue water. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to survive. And then a month went by, and I had another vision of I was putting people's DNA into a glass bottle with every bottle had a symbol on it, and it was the people's names. And I was dropping the DNA into the bottles. And I don't know where I was at that point, maybe Egypt, I'm not sure. But I just remember thinking, wow, those symbols is someone's name.
Yeah.
And when I did the alchemy session with Siobhan, I feel so weird saying this because I feel like, oh, like people think that I'm going to be full of shit, but I had a blue avian experience, and
Really?
his name was, like, I couldn't say his name because I was getting it back to me as symbols.
Really?
I had a really hard time. I think we did come up with some name, but it was really hard for me to actually, it was tough.
During one of my Reiki sessions, so the healer I see, she also, does like a psychic reading and channels messages at the same time. And she got given a symbol to give to me, and they told her this is how I would write my name where I come from. And
Really?
and she wrote it down, and she said it's very specific. It has to be this number. And she was like looking ahead and drew it out for me. So I'm familiar with what you're talking about as far as that goes.
So cool.
That's
I love
awesome.
to hear that kind of stuff because then it like validates the stuff that I had happen to me.
Yeah.
So, but I'm like, oh God, what was I one of the people that like made babies in petri dishes or something? Why was I putting DNA into bottles?
Yeah.
I thought that was so weird. But then I'm like, well, was it really me, or was it just the memory that I had of someone else doing it? But I thought that it was my hand putting the DNA into the bottles. But
interesting.
Yeah, but again, I was like in work and like fully awake and not even sitting down, walking. And I just had this very quick flash vision.
Really?
I thought, that's really odd. That wasn't even like in a dream. But yet I can't remember my dreams, but I'm having like daydreams of stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
Speaking of that, so you said you had experiences as a child with ETs, I guess. Have you?
I'm not sure what they were. Yeah, probably ETs, interdimensionals.
Do you still have experiences?
Not that I know.
Not that you recall.
Not that I can recall. But I'm like the queen of not remembering anything. Like I'll remember.
Unless it has to do with narcissism, then you know.
Like I had nicknames for these beings because I couldn't say their names.
Yeah.
So when I was little, I would call them like whatever I felt like, whatever. And I think one of them was like Skinny Witch, and the other one was like Lucy, because I love Lucille Ball or something. My mom was, so that's why my mom was like, oh, it's definitely imaginary. My dad was like, he would say it to me like all the time. He's like, ain't no way whatever you were talking to was imaginary. He's like, there's no way.
Yeah. Well, cool. At least you
tell by like the voice inflections and stuff. And
yeah.
You really need to see Barbara Lamb. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Does she regress people?
Yeah. I've seen her. She regresses abductees.
Oh, okay.
Or people who've had experiences like you're talking about. And she'll take you back into, if you're a child, she'll take you back into that moment and put you back there. And you actually see stuff that you couldn't see at the time, and you have recall.
Right.
And it's really...
That's great. I would love that. Like Corey
Aaron's going to see her like in a week or two, right?
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. I gotta reconnect with her because
Corey said that like there's such a low percentage of people that actually do remember.
Yeah.
So it's like totally normal that I don't remember.
Yeah.
He was obviously one of the ones that did, but a lot of people don't know this. In fact, I've had people tell me that they don't remember him saying this, but I did see one interview with him where he said he remembers being little and being taken to like a ship, and
the woman was putting different planets in front of him and going, what do you think about this planet? What do you think about? And then when he got to the ones that resonated with him, then she knew, okay, well, tell me about this.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in a room with a bunch of other little kids that they were doing the same thing to. When he said that story, I got like triggery.
Really?
I got like chills and I got very triggery. And I think that it had something to do with when I was telling you about when we had the Shore House in Atlantic City, and I used to go into the alleyway and they would come. And so I'm like, but I don't remember. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, maybe you will. Aaron, what time are we at? Do we?
Yeah, we were really.
We're about an hour and 45 minutes.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
we need to wrap this up.
Yes. Sorry.
But before we wrap it up,
Go for a new record.
one last question.
Yes.
Epstein, alive or dead?
Dead.
Dead?
See, I think alive, but either at a secret somewhere on the planet that's, you know, out of the public eye, or off planet possibly.
If he is alive, I agree with you. But
or he's dead. I'm open to any of that. The one thing I do know is he did not commit suicide.
He definitely didn't commit suicide. It's who killed him is the
I think at this point I don't even want to give I don't even want to speculate, because it could be either way.
Yeah,
I know.
But
isn't it the not
if he
knowing
was killed, I don't think the Alliance, the good guys, the White Hats, would have let that happen if it didn't matter anymore. You know, if they got everything needed and they're like, all right, fine, go for it. You know, because it just doesn't make any sense that they would.
My ego was so angry when he died, because I automatically got triggered into thinking that, like, now this means we're not going to be able to take down all the other people.
No, that's not
justice.
Yeah,
I didn't have that feeling at all.
I got so weird, and then I wasn't able to use my empath meter to tell me if he was alive or dead, because my ego clouded me up so
you got
bad.
Triggered.
I got so triggered that I was just a seething ball of anger, because I have this thing with Hillary Clinton. Like, it's so bad that I had a dream that she tried to kill me.
Oh, really?
Yes. Like I know it's an issue that I need to deal with, because when I see her, my head comes off my shoulders.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I need to work on that.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on. I know exactly what to look for now when I'm looking for a narcissist. Thank you.
Yeah. No, seriously, it's so huge now. You can spot.
You'll be like, oh my goodness, Stephanie said something about this, you know what I mean? And then you'll be thinking about it.
Yeah. Totally.
Sure. No, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this, with that, especially because people are in that situation. So,
well, the percentage is much higher than the DSM tells us is in the world, like of those kinds of people. It's much higher, you know, than what do they say? It's like 3% or something ridiculous.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's way more than that.
Yeah.
So, but it's not crazy high, but it's definitely higher than what they tell you. So anyway, I don't want to talk anymore. I got to give Sue a shout out. Sue McClure, I love you.
We love you too, Sue.
I was just hanging out with her a few days ago. So
she told me she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is awesome.
And you're not going to DOD, Tyler?
No, unfortunately.
I was not, but I am.
Aaron.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I'll be there in spirit. Don't worry.
I was just going to say, you'll be there in spirit. All right, guys.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. Don't forget, we never even tell people this, Aaron, but we are available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, not just YouTube. We have, the Facebook page, obviously. So don't forget about the other platforms, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy this. Thanks again, Stephanie, and have a good night.
You too. Bye, guys.
Bye.